All right, so today's message is for truck drivers, or those that may be posing as truck drivers that come into the comment section sometimes and they say negative things about freight brokers in general. They make comments like freight brokers are crooks, freight brokers are middlemen that not needed, they don't bring any value to the table, freight brokers need to be cut out of the equation altogether. Okay, so I get that. I can understand that there could be some frustration around someone else that you have to go through to get freight. But it's a choice. You choose to go through a freight broker, or you can choose not to go through a freight broker, right? But I think that there is a reason why many owner-operators choose to go through freight brokers and large trucking companies. I've worked direct with large trucking companies as well. The reason for that a lot of times is that you don't want to get your own freight, because at the end of the day, that is the real game. The real game is to be able to go in and negotiate with shippers to win opportunities to win their freight. That's what it's about. And most times, truck drivers don't want to commit the time, the energy, and effort, the skill to getting their own freight. Most of you have fallen in love with the concept, the idea, the theory of getting your own freight, being able to cut the middleman completely out. That sounds good and briefs well, but when you have to start tackling that issue on your own, then that's a different story. Then you start to realize maybe this is something that I want to source out, and maybe freight brokers aren't so bad. But I can see the point as to why the truck driver would look at the option of cutting the freight broker out. If I was a truck driver, I would first look at it and say, hey, if there's somebody that's standing between me and my money, how can I get rid of that somebody? But then I would also have to look at the value that that somebody brought to the table. And is that worth me keeping? Is it a benefit to me, right? So if I take a look at that and I see the benefit, I keep it. If I don't, then I have to look at it and decide to gradually walk away from it. Because a new freight broker and truck driver just starting out, they have the same access to shippers. Plus the truck driver has his own truck. So what's stopping that truck driver from saying, hey, I'm going to go ahead and start out by going direct to shippers? There's nothing stopping him but himself. His own decision to say at some point, hey, you know what? I'm not going to do this on my own. I am going to use a freight broker. Is it easier to use a freight broker? Yes. Is it going to cost you to use a freight broker? Absolutely. And it's easy to start off and start talking about, hey, I'm not going to use a freight broker, because you're having those conversations in a comfortable environment. Usually we're sitting back with friends and we're talking about how we would approach our trucking company, how we wouldn't use a freight broker. But when you actually get in the game, that type of stuff changes, because you are now facing this thing head on. It's different talking about it than it is doing it. So at some point you have to prove that you can work separate of freight brokers. And I would like to ask the question now. The people that are tuned into this channel, truck drivers, if you have a small truck driving company, how many of you, answer this in the comment section below, how many of you go out and get your own freight and you do that exclusively on your own? You never use freight brokers. How many of you do that? I would suggest that there's not a whole lot of small trucking companies doing that, right? I would love to see what the results are by the comments in the comment section. And I don't mean you getting freight once or twice on your own or for a few months. I mean that you're doing that all the time and you're solely responsible for getting your own freight. You're probably not going to see very many people doing that. And the reason for that, because we always have to look at the fact that there's something that comes attached to that. There's a why truck drivers don't go out and get their own freight, because it consumes too much of their time. It takes away from them being able to drive and make money. Because at the end of the day, the truck driver is in business to drive trucks and make money, not to sit down and have to make sales calls, especially when he's not equipped to do so. He doesn't have a sales team, so he can't commit those type of resources, that type of time to sales. So most will choose to outsource that portion of your business. When it's all said and done, people can say whatever it is that they want to say. It's a free country, right? Everybody has an opinion, and you can say that the freight broker has no value. You can also say that the freight broker sits at home and he doesn't do very much. But if we take a look at the actions of truck drivers in mass numbers, what we would recognize is that the freight broker services is very much needed because truckers continue to use freight broker services. And as long as they do that, as long as a truck driver chooses to use a freight broker services, a freight broker will be in high demand. So as you can see, I believe that the burden of proof is on the truck driver to prove that he doesn't need the services of the freight broker. It's not just about saying it, it's about showing that you can do without it. And how you do that is stop using it in mass numbers. Until that time comes, you're just blowing a lot of hot air, you're just talking, blowing smoke. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I certainly hope this information has been helpful. If you're interested in learning more about the freight broker business, I'll leave a free link in the description. It's my 5-video series, and it's titled How the Load Movement Process Works. It will give you a chance to come into the office with me and watch me as I move loads, talk to shippers and carriers. That way you can get a better understanding of how the business works before you come into it. And if you're interested in learning about how to transition from a part-time freight broker to a full-time freight broker, I'll leave a free video right here. So until the next time, I wish you the very best in your life and business. See you at the top because the bottom is much too crowded.